Welcome to Sustainable Success. I'm your host, Chris Salem. You found us here at the Voice America Business Channel, now on Lipson. Yes, we've been on this new platform now since January. We are so excited to be now reaching even more people than we've had in the past. And again, if you've been with us for a long time, again, we are always committed to you being a loyal follower of the Voice America Business Channel with Sustainable Success, since our show is now going into its 8th year. It's hard to believe it's been 8 years that this show has been going on. We'll be celebrating officially in the middle of May, coming up next month. Again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts each and every week to share their words of wisdom and to elevate your business to the next level. If there is any future content that you have not heard on the show, which I would find that hard to believe up to this point, but if so, please reach out to us at chris@sustainablesuccess.net. We'd be more than happy to get that information and make sure that we can cover it for a future show with the right subject matter expert. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. So if you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, you can check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, I am so excited for today's show. This is a topic that is so required today, not just on a situational basis, but even more importantly, on a daily basis, because we are faced with, crisis, even on minor levels, each and every day. We're going to be talking about crisis, communication, and leadership under pressure. We are here with Kevin McIntyre. He is a lieutenant colonel, retired, but he is now a FEMA-certified crisis communication instructor, Fortune 500 leadership trainer, and professor of business communication who has coached over 6,000 leaders in crisis management and public speaking. He has delivered powerful keynote speeches and workshops at major conferences, including the Montessori event in Denver with over 4,000 attendees. So today you're going to be learning how to make sound decisions under pressure, how to turn crisis into opportunities for growth, and mastering public speaking to lead with confidence. And also finally building resilience as a leader in today's fast-changing world. And without further ado, we welcome Kevin McIntyre to the show. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm having a great day, and I want to meet that person that you just introduced. It's a pretty awesome person there. It's always crazy whenever an MC or someone like yourself introduces, or I listen to them introduce other experts. It's pretty amazing.
Thank
You
you.
did a pretty good job of encapsulating 40 years of work.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for number one, and all of us here at Sustainable Success for your service, by the way. That is most important. And I know you'll probably be sharing a lot of valuable insights from your experience here and how you help leaders in corporations and anybody involved in crisis situations that support the general public. And we will be looking forward to that. So if we always like to start the show off with the guest, to get some background, like, maybe sharing a little bit about your military career, what, led you up to really, making it a passion to really help leaders under pressure in crisis situations, whether if they're major, minor, or somewhere in between.
Well, it goes back probably to the late 1980s, early 1990s. In that situation was military. And what I found was that flying medical evacuation, first Gulf War, second Gulf War, being involved in the Grenada invasion in the early 80s, I saw a lot of people who, when the chips were down, so to speak, when the pressure was on, not everybody responds very well. And the reason that they don't is because they never planned to respond very well. Now, there are some folks who, under pressure, just naturally, I guess because of genetics, DNA, whatever, I just happen to be one of those who it doesn't matter if the bullets are flying, the bombs are going off, or something's going bad at the corporation. The blood pressure doesn't go up, the heart rate doesn't go up, nothing really happens. Now, that does not necessarily mean that you're a great decision maker Or in the public speaking realm, had a lot of clients tell me, I don't know why I came to your training because I'm perfectly comfortable when I stand in front of 5,000 people. And then they see themselves on film and they go, okay, well, now I know why I'm here. I had a Harvard professor that I was training that happened to work for a pharmaceutical company on the side. Watch his first video of a 2 minute talk, and he goes, I said, well, Doc, what do you think of that? He goes, he fell back in his chair, threw his hands up. He goes, well, now I know why I've been boring my students for the last 30 years.
And, and it's shocking too because sometimes these people they're very knowledgeable, have a wealth of wisdom, but just maybe perhaps it's just learning to tweak how they deliver and maybe use their body language better. I can relate being a professional speaker myself for several years,
Hmm.
and totally can support exactly what you said. So yeah.
Yeah, I tell my students at the university in the business communication class, I said, learning the number one skill you have to learn to be able to hold forth in front of a room, no matter the size of the audience or who the audience is. Could be the C-suite, it could be a stadium full of people. We have those situations. The first skill you need to learn is how to be comfortable. Well, this is true in public speaking, but it's also true in the crisis management realm. And they're like, well, you're either comfortable or you're not. I said, no, it is a learned skill.
Yeah.
And it's the first skill you have to have in both of those arenas. Because if you're not comfortable, everybody's going to see it. Then they're going to worry about you, or they're going to say, well, this person can't lead us out of this crisis because they're falling apart.
Yeah.
And whenever we see somebody on the stage and they look or seem very uncomfortable, we worry about them instead of listening to their message.
Yeah, that's so true. And and something, yeah, I remember, I can't remember who did a talk on this. I've spoken in the past at the National Association of Government Communicators, or and a lot of times those people in that segment have to report on certain things that are not going to be, they're going to be tough to hear by some people, especially if it's a crisis, if it's maybe a tornado came through a community, or, it was a hurricane or something. It could be just anything. And so what you just said totally related, when I remember hearing somebody share on that when I attended that conference a few years ago where I spoke, and so important. What would you like, when you think about crisis and and communication and leading under pressure, what would you suggest that that people that are in those roles or planning to go into those roles, what would be the in the the first things that they should be working on to to get better or to adapt to those situations?
Well, I'll put my professor hat on for just a moment. There's a guy named Alfred Bandera, and he came up with a learning theory, and it's called social learning theory. It later became social cognitive theory. And what it says is that if you want to become good at something, find somebody that's always already doing it well and learn from them. And in many cases, you could learn just by observing them. Now, you can't be that person, but you can watch their demeanor, how they use their voice, how they use their body, how they walk into a room, very important. How you take the stage when you're introduced, etc. And then you go, okay, I think I can do that. Now, it's very interesting because I try to emulate these behaviors in the classroom at Georgia State. And then my students get up and they try to, in their way, they try to do it. And they're like, well, Professor Mack, I can't do this. I'm like, I know it's very hard. Well, because we do not have the neural structures built in our brain yet. So once you find somebody that you can emulate, then you start practicing. And I always tell people that, okay, if you're going to practice something, it's like golf.
Yes.
I can go to the driving range and I can have Snuffy tell me how to hit the 7 iron, and I can practice that and practice. I go out to the actual golf course and I'm duffing the ball, I'm shanking it over to the right, I'm pulling it into the left, I'm ending up in the sand. But wait a minute, I've been practicing with the 7 iron for 6 months. Well, you've been practicing the wrong thing. You're a 10 cup. And so I tell people, if you're going to emulate somebody, make sure that it's somebody that's successful and has some traction in whatever you're trying to learn. And Alfred Bandera, Dr. Bandera, he very much emphasized that if you're going to learn from someone, make sure you're learning the right thing.
Right way, yeah.
Yeah. So I share with the students how I became comfortable in front of a room because I haven't always been. And
I think we all have. Like I mean, even myself, I've been speaking since 1993. I'm 50, going on 58 years old. I started speaking in 19, but I didn't start speaking professionally until 2000. And I always say, Toastmasters was a great platform for me when I went in to help me to get comfortable in speaking in front of people
Mhm.
and also eliminating my ahs and ums over time. Like that was a good resource for me because I could be now in front of my peers that were on a similar level that I was at that time, and we weren't there to judge. We were just there to, help and correct things that we could get better.
It's funny you mentioned the ums and the uhs, the so's, the likes. I always tell my professional students in the workshops that I conduct for professionals who are just want to be better speakers for their company.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've got a keynote, a CEO has a keynote coming up and they need to refine either well, they usually just want to refine their message, but I help them refine their delivery as well because I can't help myself.
Okay.
And they they still use filler words. And I tell people, I say, when I'm done with you, you will not be using filler words, but I'm not going to tell you not to use filler words. So I
Yeah.
have a little secret sauce that I teach them that absolutely eliminates all filler words, but we don't concentrate on eliminating filler words.
I like that. Yeah. And if you don't mind, it's up to you. I'll leave it to you because I don't know if there's something, that you do this through, your paid services, but if you'd like to share anything that could help in that area, you're more than welcome to. And if not, no worries. I totally understand it. But because you find that there's a lot of filler words out there. I hear it a lot in a lot of breakouts or any type of talk.
It's one of those secret sauce things that I would rather keep.
Yeah, you're totally fine with that. I totally get it. And the fact that you said that, it means that those people that are listening right now, if you're serious about, stepping up as a leader, whether if you're not a professional speaker or not, or just tasked to, to communicate at a higher level, well, you just found your contact person here with
I
Kevin.
appreciate that.
So,
It's very interesting. I have a Vietnamese student. I have a very multicultural, truly multicultural, not what we think of in modern. I mean, everybody, half my class is from different countries. And so I have a Vietnamese lady in there, probably, I think she's the oldest one in the class. I think she's 25.
oh my God.
And she stood up, she told me, she goes, I have to translate in my mind, which is not unusual. I've heard that many times. I have to,
My wife does that. My wife is Spanish. She's Venezuelan. She does the same thing. She's in that few seconds has to say in her mind Spanish and then quickly translate into English.
what's amazing, every other word was like or when she
Yeah,
stood up to speak. Now, when she stands up to speak, we don't hear any of that.
that's fabulous. Is
But
there?
it's a technique it's a proprietary technique, so I don't really want
No,
to.
no, that's totally fine. No, you do not have to reveal that. Only if people obviously secure your services, which you will have a chance to share with our audience here later today how they can take advantage of that. It would need it. Where do you find like, like right now when you think, and I know we're going to be going to break here in about less than 4 minutes, and we have plenty of time to share in the second segment. But, I've, there are a lot of leaders out there, even people that are in high level positions that, are tasked to come talk to a group of people, whether if it's business related, internally to their customers. Maybe it's just something in general. Maybe they're doing something in their community and somehow, where they look confident, when they're doing what they do normally in their role and duties. Now, when they're now have to speak in front of a certain amount of people, all of a sudden they become a deer in the headlights. It's just like they're frozen. Like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I handle this? And what do you like anything advice or anything you'd like to share in helping those types of leaders in those types of situations?
Well, there's a number of things. One, if you're going to do that, you have to visit the venue before it's your turn to speak.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that. They don't even know what the stairs are like, let's say, to get up to a stage, if that's the situation. They have never learned how to take a room. because you and I both know you don't walk into a room, you take the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to like you own it, not arrogantly, but confidently.
Confidently, yes. It's not
Not
ego, it's not
arrogance.
cockiness. It's I know exactly what you're sharing. And that's not like I know for me it's always in my energy. I have to be vibrating at a certain level. And like you said, I go to that room, not, I go well in advance, but then I even go, in well before people start coming in to pick up on the energy of the people that are coming into the room, whether if it's a small breakout to a keynote to a workshop, a roundtable, does not matter that you're picking up on that energy. At least that's what I've learned how to do.
And I think that what I've learned from my 6,000 plus people that I've taught this to is that they think about the wrong things before they have the opportunity.
Mm,
In other words, they think of everything that can go wrong. What if my technology fails me? What if I look out in the audience and somebody looks like they swallowed a lemon? What if they judge me? And I tell my students at the university, I said, guess what? They are judging you, but they're not judging you as a person. They're judging whether they should listen to you or not. And that's
yeah,
okay. Because
yeah,
if you're not worth listening to, then you're not worth listening to.
exactly.
But your preparation can make you worth listening to.
Yeah. No, I'd love to go, into a deeper dive into that in the next segment, so we'll have
Sure.
time. We're in the, we have a minute before the break, Kevin, before we go to our commercial break. Anything else like you want to elaborate what you've already shared or sum up to what you've shared so far that will enlighten the listeners here?
Yeah, let's talk about comfort a little bit more. Let's say I am tasked, and you will be if you want to rise in your company, your organization, you're going to be tasked to speak in front of an audience at some point at a conference or something. And what people need to understand is the reason that they're nervous is a physiological and psychological reaction to feeling like you're in danger. I call it the zebra effect. I'll describe that a little bit more detail after our break. But it's just adrenaline. And adrenaline has a half-life of about 90 to 120 seconds, but you can cut that in half with some certain techniques that I teach. So I'll share that in just a little bit if you like.
Absolutely. Definitely will do that. And again, if you are, just joining us here, we've been talking to Kevin McIntyre, former lieutenant colonel in the armed forces, now been a professional keynote speaker. He's a law professor at Georgia State, and he's just sharing a lot of insights that could help you, whether if you are a professional speaker or not, and how you could really, really step up to really lead in a time of crisis, no matter what level that is, and how we can better communicate and lead under pressure. We got more to come when we come right back with Kevin McIntyre, and we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Sustainable Success. We're here with Kevin McIntyre. We're talking about crisis communication and leadership under pressure. Again, we encourage everyone to listen to the first segment and the rest of the show in its entirety. Just a lot of great information and golden nuggets, especially for those that are in positions that where you have to communicate to one to few or one to many, whether if it's just on a certain frequency or on a regular basis. This is the show for you. And any of those that are speakers that aspire to really elevate your speaking at a higher level, you are in the right place. Kevin, you had, before the break had mentioned something about the zebra effect.
Mhm.
And I know we didn't have time to go into too much length because we were just ready to go to break. So I figured like maybe if you could share with the audience a little bit more about what that is and so on, and then, guess share some insights in how we can, go around and really rise from that.
Sure. The zebra effect really is talking about how, when we stand in front of an audience, how we're uncomfortable. And I mentioned adrenaline before the break as well. Well, let's say you're on a photo safari on the Serengeti, and you pulled up next to a herd of zebras, and you might look over and you might see a lioness, because they're the hunters, right beside the zebras. And you're like, well, why isn't the lioness attacking the zebras? It's because they cannot see an individual zebra when
Mm.
they're in the pack. I learned this from an animal husbandry professor.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can't.
I did not know that. I
Yeah,
learned
so the
that's so
stripes on
valuable.
the
I learned
zebra
that.
don't help it if it's standing out alone, but it does if they're in the herd.
Yes.
Well, some zebras they lose situational awareness and they wander off from the herd, and then suddenly, you
They're
know,
easy prey. Yeah.
lights out. Well, when we now we're not animals, we're not in a herd, but when we leave the safety of the group, let's say from a seated position with a group of folks, and it could be a few or 100 or 5,000, doesn't matter. And suddenly we're the center of attention. We're now the zebra that has left the safety of the herd. And we look out and we can begin to think that everybody out there is a lioness and they're trying to hunt us down, because what we feel when we're uncomfortable is the fight or flight syndrome.
Yes.
And we can't fight because we're there to deliver a message. And so we need to overcome those feelings. It helps to understand what's happening to us physiologically. It's just a jolt of adrenaline that has a half-life of about 120 seconds. Because if you ask somebody after they speak, were you nervous? Well, I was nervous for a little while, but once I got going, I felt better. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's because the half-life of adrenaline flowing through your veins.
Yeah.
I call it rocket fuel because you don't want to stand up and be, hi, I'm Kevin McIntyre. I'm really happy to be here today. I appreciate the Voice of America having me on the cast. It'll be very exciting.
Monotone. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need a little bit of that jolt. I call it the rocket fuel, but what the problem is we get overloaded.
Yeah.
We get overloaded. So what how can we eliminate that?
And that's where what you mentioned, right? When that happens, where a lot of the filler words can come in, or the ahs and ums, that type of thing.
Yes,
Because you
because what
start
we're
to
doing
switch
then
over.
is we're trying to remember what we're going to say next.
Yeah.
And instead of giving ourselves a moment to think what's coming next, we try to keep talking. And a lot of people will go beyond the normal 140, 45 words per minute, all the way up to 180 to 200.
Yeah.
And nobody can follow that. That's like trying to turn a Corvette 90 degrees going 100 miles an hour. That's
Yeah.
not going to end well.
Yeah. You're gonna wreck.
So we speak too fast. And the other thing that does, it trims down our ability to use our voice, either
Mm.
to slow down or to speed up if we want to, or to add vocal intonation.
Yeah.
So it completely eliminates the ability. But let's go back to the comfort.
Yes.
What happens is physicality, in other words, using your body in a very specific way, helps cut down that 120 seconds, let's say to 30 to 45. Wouldn't that be nice? I guarantee everybody that comes to my workshop that their anxiety will reduce by 50% or more and stay that way.
Mm.
And the reason being is because I teach them how to use their body to dissipate the additional energy right out of the gate. Most people
Wow.
have no idea what to do with their hands or their body when they speak. They have no idea, and I teach them to be very specific, to paint the picture so that these are doing exactly what this is saying.
Got it. Is it true, Kevin, that when you just said that, and I can really relate to that, that when we use our body or even our hands, maybe shifting that body language is very effective. I mean, does it make usually it makes up most of effective communication, a good portion of that. As
Absolutely. And here's something else that I think our listeners need to know. The voice follows the body, not the other way around.
ah,
So when you see people stand up and they are protecting themselves, they have
yes,
hands crossed in front of their body or low, or they're clutching and clasping what they're doing is diminishing their effectiveness from a number one, a visual perspective for the audience that's present, but it's also containing their ability. And I'm finding it hard since I'm demonstrating this visually. It's hard for me to be as expressive as I want to be because I'm containing myself.
yeah.
I'm diminishing myself.
So would it be safe to say like that's why sometimes when people are behind a podium, they feel like maybe that gives them a sense of comfort, but yet it's hard to see their body language because now we can see a little bit, obviously, but there, you got the mic, you got the lower bodies, obviously, you can't see anything. And so sometimes again, that could also work against you as
Can
well.
I tell you a story?
Yes.
So I had a C-suite person come to my training. So we have different levels, and for senior leaders, they're
Yeah.
with other senior or executive leaders. So I had an executive leader, female, very, very accomplished woman that works for one of the major cruise lines, and she's in the C-suite. And she was practicing so the way they do it at their annual meeting, the seven of them have a segment in front of the entire company.
Yeah.
So she says there's about 1,500 to 2,000 employees that come to this thing once a year. And I said, well, what's the stage like? Well, we have to stand behind a podium and we have a microphone and all this. So she spoke, she did a practice session behind the podium. It was awful. And I said, Carissa, that wasn't her name. I'll just say Carissa. Carissa,
Yeah.
step out from the podium and speak. It was like a different person.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, when you go to this conference, you need number one to have either a microphone in your hand or you need to have a
Like yeah,
lavalier or
lavalier or
something.
something. Yeah.
And you need to walk out from the podium. She goes, oh, I don't know if I can do that because the CEO might get mad because we've been doing this the same way for 7 years. I said, they'll love you. And then they'll all want to do it. She
Uh,
called me back a couple of weeks later because it was just a week out from this event. She goes, you know what the CEO said? He goes, we're going to bust up the the there's nobody going to speak from behind the podium anymore because
yeah.
she just rocked it.
It's so true. And and somehow, like you said, like it might be nervous in the beginning, like maybe that first few minutes. And
Hmm.
as she begins to probably pick up on the connection, people are engaged. They're not doing this. They're not looking at their phones. They're not looking out the window. It's kind of they're engaged with her. And I guess it starts to relax her in some way, that she feels that she could be more at ease and
Well, she
probably,
wasn't really a nervous type. She
oh,
was
not the nervous type. Okay, got it.
not at all. She was behind the podium because she thought that's
That's how you're supposed to do it.
practice it
Got
the
it.
way she was going to do it. And I said, that doesn't work for you. That doesn't work for most
Yeah,
people. And what it does, it creates a barrier between you and your audience.
totally.
So you need to remove that so that they can see that you're in command of yourself. You cannot command a room until you're in command of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. So true. No, that's some great insight. And I'm sure there are a lot of people like that, that have that myth or whatever it is that in their minds that, oh, it's a podium that when you're delivering anything that's worthwhile or serious, you got to do it behind a podium. And it's not true because audiences, I guess, as the old adage says, they're not always going to remember what you said, but they're always going to remember how you helped them to make them feel. And body language plays an important role in that.
Yeah, it's either congruent or incongruent. There's a saying that
Yeah.
says, can't hear what you're saying because what you're doing speaks so loudly.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said that, but I love that. And it's played out in my coaching and then even in my own speaking is that you can be doing one thing and saying something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
So it's so important. No, I think that that's great. And in terms of like, preparation, like you had talked about preparation, like, coming in, looking at the room, looking at the stairs, like, kind of when you come in, how you're going to come in, making sure that you have that planned out.
Yes.
When it comes to like the actual talk, is it important? Like, because a lot of times people will prepare, but sometimes they may over prepare, meaning that they're now so caught up in making sure they memorize either the entire speech or a good part of it, and then if something happens, like, that might, throw them off, now they're like, oh my God, where did I leave off? And, and it's hard to get back on track. Do you suggest that they don't do that, or, kind of like, again, just know what they're going to talk about, but doesn't mean it always has to come out the same verbatim. It's again, making sure that you're connecting with that audience. That's most important.
Absolutely. And so I tell people, and everybody that I know that has ever tried to memorize their speech and give it, they fail.
Yeah.
And the reason they do is because the moment they forget a sentence, they fall apart.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to deliver perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tell people, don't let good enough get in the way of perfection. So what you do is you set the table. And what I mean by that is, from an adult learning theory perspective, adults in the audience, and I'm assuming we're speaking to adults here.
Yes.
In an adult audience, adults want to know where you're taking them. They don't want to wait to minute 4, 5, 6, or 7 before you tell them what the talk is about.
Mm.
You set the table beginning. Hey, this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about how to be more comfortable. We're going to talk about how to use your body. And then finally, we're going to talk about a great ending to every talk. Are you ready? Let's go. Let's talk about that first one. I know comfort's on the minds of everyone because we stand up and we go, holy heck, what the heck just happened to me? Now my heart's racing at 120 beats a minute. I feel flushed and all this. Well, let's talk about the cure for that. And then I just go right into it.
Yeah.
And I usually have a story. I tell about how I froze in my first speech class, and they had to walk me off the stage.
Yeah. And it's happened to us. And I think I could look back at even my career as a speaker for the number of years. Yeah, and even though you get better over time, and you do, and now you get really good at it, there's still gonna be times where you're off. It just happens. We're human.
Circadian
Not
rhythm.
allowing that to throw you off. It's just, hey, okay, I know what I did, know what I got. I got to make sure that doesn't happen again, and so on. But no, so true. So like, and I love what you said. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. It's continuously improving.
Mhm.
And there, and again, it's not about making sure that you got to get all the stuff that you planned on saying, because your audience doesn't even know what you're going to say. They just know that you're sharing something that's connecting with them. That's really what's important.
Yeah,
And
you just hit something very, very key there. I always tell my audience, even if you're one of these people that memorizes your speech or your talk and you forget a sentence, nobody can read your mind. You're the only one that knows. So I give them, so here's something that really helps, especially people that are just starting out in their career, or maybe they're deep into their career. Nobody's ever taught them any technique. Let's say you're speaking and you're on point number 1, and you can become flushed or flustered because maybe you look out at the CEO and they look like they swallowed a lemon or something. But we shouldn't judge that, but that's another
yeah,
subject. But and so it throws you off. Well, have you ever watched a comedian? Comedians always have a drink handy.
yeah,
Well, hey, hang on just a second. I need to get a sip. I'm a little parched, and my allergies are getting to me. They're not really thirsty. They
no,
forgot what the next joke was. They
exactly,
need a moment.
exactly. It's a great like to distract, just to buy some time to to
My
get.
young student said to the university, "Oh, Professor Mack, I don't know if I could do that or not." I said, "Sure you can." I said, because your audience knows you're a human being and they expect you to do human things, including breathe.
Yeah.
If they see you breathe, it's okay. I have another off ramp. So I call these off ramps, but I always tell everybody you need to get back on, get back on the interstate, but the off ramp. Hey, you know what? I was going to move on to my second point that we talked about at the beginning of the talk, but I'm looking out here and I still see some confused faces, and maybe I need to flesh that out just a little bit more. So let me tell you a little bit more about that, and then we'll move on to the next point. And so what happens is that you really, it's not really so. It's just that you forgot what you were going to move to next. And now your mind relaxes as you share more about the first point. And then the next theme flows up and you're able then to get back on track. So you just tell people, or you give a command to the audience. If I speak after lunch, I always tell people after the first minute or so I get started, I go, oh, hold on. Gosh, did y'all have some carbohydrates for lunch? Because everybody looks pretty sleepy. What I have to share with you is kind of important. So I need everybody to stand up and stretch.
Yes.
Look at the person next to you and tell them how nice they look. So I tell my students, look, command the room means you give the room a
Yeah.
command and they will, everybody. Now,
Yeah.
10% of people will not. And I said, by the way, 10% of everybody, every audience you ever speak to is not listening to you. They aren't.
Yeah.
And not everybody that's sitting there like this with their arms crossed,
Yeah.
looking like they just swallowed a gopher.
Yeah.
Not everybody, that's not about you. Now, if everybody in the room
Yeah.
is doing that, that probably is about you. But if you look out there and you see one person, it's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely we got to go to break, but I want to follow back up on that in the next segment. Again, if you are listening or just joining us here, again, we're talking about crisis communication and leadership under pressure with Kevin McIntyre. We got to go to break, everybody. When we come right back, we got more to come, especially for those that are tasked with speaking in their role and duties. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Sustainable Success. We're talking about crisis communication and leadership under pressure here with Kevin McIntyre. Again, our show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and meeting new people for the first time. They also now feature a from athletes to entrepreneurs section. Yes, for those professional athletes that are now transitioning into everyday life, maybe perhaps going into a franchise, buying a franchise, or maybe you're starting a business, or maybe starting a new career all together. You don't have to do it alone. Yes, you can now form a group or groups with other professional athletes that are making that same transition, help make it more seamless for you. And they also feature a podcast, a weekly podcast from athlete to entrepreneur podcast. So a lot of great insights. If you'd like some more information about that particular area of Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Kevin, just so much valuable information that you've shared in the show, and going back to the crisis communication and leadership under pressure. Decision making is always going to be imperative with people in these types of situations, whether if it's on a frequent basis, situational basis, or whatever level that would be. Can you share with us about the importance of decision making? How can they get better at it? And any insight or tips or techniques that you could share to help in that area?
Yeah, let me tell you a little story to set this up. I was
Sure.
walking into I was shopping or going shopping, and I was walking into the store, and suddenly over to my right, I saw a really nice car. And I had never seen this car before, and I became interested because I like cars. And I walked over, and the windows were tinted a little bit on this car, and I started looking at it. And all of a sudden, the owner popped out, "Can I help you?"
You're like, yeah.
Young guy. It turned out to be very nice. I said, "Oh, I was just admiring your car. I've not seen this model before. I was just wondering." He goes, "Oh, yeah." I was like, "Well, that's kind of a weird response." Very disappointed. I said, "Well, tell me more." He said, "Well, I went to the dealership. I was very emotional. I had been in love with this car for a while." And he goes, "They really took me for a ride." And he goes, metaphorically, of course. And he says, "I bought this car. It's a $45,000 car. I didn't have good credit at the time. I have a $900 a month payment. My insurance, I didn't even check to see how much that was going to be. That's another 400. I'm paying 1,200 a month." And I looked at him and I said, "Was there a woman involved in this decision?" He goes, "How did you know that?" Bought this car to impress his girlfriend, and 3 months later she broke up with him, but he still has the car and the payment.
Oh boy.
Now, why do I tell you that story? Because he made that story thinking on what he was going to gain. Two things:
Yes.
the impressing the girlfriend, and secondly, the love of the car that he already had.
Yeah.
So he was thinking of gains. Now, the prospect theory that I think I mentioned before
Yes.
the break is a very interesting theory. And it says we make decisions either based on what we're going to gain on one end of a spectrum versus what we're going to lose on another end of the spectrum. And here's the kicker. And I shared this with my audience at the Montessori event in Denver a couple of weeks ago because they have decisions to make. The beauty of this, it can be made in a crisis situation or used in a crisis situation, but also in your personal life, as the story just demonstrated. I used this to ask my wife to marry me. As a matter of fact, I used.
So maybe somebody could get some valuable marriage advice here.
Well, yeah, yeah. So if you make decisions based only or further to the right, let's say, of what I'm going to gain, you have a very high chance of making a bad decision. Now, why is that? Because when we are emotional, which tends to be on the gain side of things, when we're emotional about a decision, we tend to block out counter information.
Mm,
In other words, we ignore data that says, maybe I should check the price of the insurance before I make this investment.
yeah.
Maybe I need to check my budget to make sure I can afford 1,200 a month just to drive one car. He didn't do any of that. And so that's prospect theory. You ever, let's say you come up with something and your family goes, "Well, what are your prospects?" Let's say a new job, or maybe I have students trying to go for their master's program. But what are your prospects? What are they saying to you? "Well, can you give me a letter saying that I should get into the MBA program?" "Well, sure, I can." And so if we do not temper the gains with the losses, then we tend to make bad decisions. If we balance that or even just slightly go to the other side of the spectrum where we think about what we're going to lose if we make the decision, whatever that decision is, could be ask somebody to marry me, it could be a decision during a crisis. If we think of what we could lose, we tend to not attenuate or block out the information that might be counter to making that decision. So
Yeah.
uh, it's very useful in thinking of it that way. And
Yeah.
they have that theory has been used across disciplines for the last 30, 40 years. Yeah,
That's great. And that sounds like something, it's been around a long, it's still, stands true today,
it
like you
does.
said.
It does.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
like I said, in a crisis, you want to make the right decisions. Now, the way to do that in a crisis is you should have a team, even if it's a team of just two people
Hmm.
who you have let them know that it's okay to counter me as the, let's say, the head of school or the CEO, if it's a school
Yep.
principal who is going to lead through the crisis. They don't mind hearing contrary ideas.
Hmm.
when I was in the military, we had these big operation centers, and every time there was an incident or something we needed to make a big decision about, we would gather the senior leaders and we all gave an opinion on what we should do. Then we would produce that to the chief of operations, and then they would make the final decision based on our input.
Hmm.
But they had different perspectives. The beauty of that is nobody's allowed to make fun of anybody else's suggestion, and everybody has to speak. So it completely blocks out self-attenuation or self-silencing, which in business is a problem. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who feel beat down, and if they offer an opinion, they're going to be talked to after the meeting. You shouldn't have said that.
Or
Or
yeah, or they,
why did you say that way? Or why did you countermand what the CEO or the C whatever said?
yeah. Yeah, and you're so right about that. Like you see that a lot, and then it
Mhm.
just shuts people down to even say anything.
Yeah. It kind of goes to leadership too, which we talked about a little bit or mentioned a little bit, and that is the worst kind of person you ever want to work for is somebody that's afraid of your knowledge
Mm, yeah,
because they will seek to destroy you.
yeah, and
And
it's
I've worked,
it's so important, like you said, if you're dealing with a situation where you're trying to get out of a challenge, it's got to be more than just one person involved
yeah,
there.
exactly. And they don't even have to be physically present. You can pick up the phone or get on a Polycom and have three or four people. Hey, this is what we're faced with.
Mm,
Sally, what do you think we should do? Bill, what do you think we should do? Tim, what do you think we should do? Sherry, what do you think we should do? Collect all that. And then that way you're not what I call, you're not in the tidy bowl syndrome of thinking. In other words, your single idea is just circulating in your mind. You have different
yeah,
perspectives that you can, this all takes just a matter of moments to do, by the way.
yeah. What would you suggest, like for those businesses or even leaders that that are listening that maybe without even realizing that maybe that's what's still going on in their in their organizations or whatever that may be, like what they can do now differently to catch themselves now and do things differently to encourage people to say share things.
Well, number one, they have to be the kind of person, a true leader that doesn't mind alternative ideas.
Mm,
And not everyone's like that, so you can't fix it.
yeah,
But if someone wants to prepare for crisis, number one, they need to have a plan, then they need to exercise it, and they need to test it so that it's nice to have a plan, but everybody in on your team, your leadership team needs to know what their part in the plan is. In other words, who's going to take charge. And I always share with clients that we do these consulting situations with. Look, you might be the owner of the company or the CEO, but if you wig out, you need to give that role to someone else and you need to be honest about it. And then that way you can observe from afar, and then you can be one of the people that makes suggestions, but you're not emotionally determining what, in other words, the calm person can decide. Because if you're if you're wigged out during a crisis or when you have a big decision, you're not going to make a good one,
yeah,
or you have a lower chance of making a good one. It's there's always room. You may get lucky.
yeah, exactly. And just at what you shared, if when you're able to be aware, you're able to adapt, and take into consideration other people's input and knowledge, and it's not about, hey, it's just my way or the highway. Obviously that you build better rapport and trust with your team, and that and more likely now to be more effective in those crisis
Yes.
situations. It's a team effort to help improve that area, not just it's always just you and everything, it comes from you. Yes, you're the leader, you might be the spokesperson to share it, but it was a team effort.
Yeah. I'll share one other thing too in the realm of crisis communication that um, people don't seem to think about, and that is when when it's time to speak to the stakeholders or internal or external. A lot of times they don't think about that. And some leaders think the first thing they need to do is rush out to the media, and I call it rushing to the microphones and make a statement. Well, generally, whatever you tell them is going to be wrong. The
Hmm.
other thing they do is they don't prepare their other people in their organization for when they're, I call it ambushed by the media. And it's not always an ambush, but that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah,
Could be this just as simple as, hey, we understand where you're going through something. What do you have to say about it? And the worst thing that anyone can say is no comment. That's the very worst thing you could say. Why? Because immediately they think you're hiding something.
exactly.
You're hiding something. Oh, what do you mean no comment? What, did somebody die?
Yeah,
Did the
I'll take
CEO
the
retire?
fifth.
Yeah. So what we train our folks to do that are not the POA, the public information officer, or the senior leader in organizations that I've actually been the director of operations or the assistant director of operations, we give everybody a card that's near the event to tell them exactly what to say to the media or to
Yeah,
anybody that asks that's not part of the organization. I know you need information. Uh, so and so is our public information officer. They're right over there. They're expecting a visit from you. I can walk you over and introduce you, but I'm not the one that has the all the information that could make the interview what you would want it to be, or something to that effect. But we never teach them to say no comment. We say direct them to whoever our crisis communication person is.
yeah. Wow, that's powerful stuff. Such valuable information, and I hope yet listeners that you're listening to this, whether no matter where you are as a leader, no matter what that title is, this is really, really important information and something that, doesn't matter if you're with a small business, a mid-sized business, or a Fortune 500 company. So important. Any other insights you'd like to share on that, Kevin?
As far as decision making or the
Yeah.
crisis communication piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, here's something else. Most people are going to say whatever comes to their mind on the fly. And what we do with our clients is we create message maps. And message maps determine, okay, if I'm speaking to this group of people, this is what I will say. This is the realm of what I will say. If I'm speaking to this group of people, this is the realm of what I'll say. If I'm speaking to this group of people, this is the realm of what I will say, and etc. Because not everybody needs the same information. It's not that you're hiding anything. It's just that certain people deserve more and other people deserve less.
Hmm.
And if you haven't thought that out, you're going to tell everybody in that strata the same thing. That's going to get you into trouble. The other thing is people overshare.
Yeah,
We keep hearing this word transparency. Transparency, we want to be transparent. Well, if you're too transparent, you could get into legal trouble.
that's true.
And we've had some clients that did not listen to our advice and they ended up in legal trouble
Yeah.
when
I
they
mean, it's
didn't
good. It's
listen.
good to come from integrity and be honest, but not like not air your dirty laundry, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Or give away personally identifiable information or somebody's medical information, which some of our clients, despite our best efforts to keep them from doing it, have given out people's medical information. They've given out their home address and all kind of stuff. And we're like, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be transparent. Okay, well, good luck with that lawsuit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's knowing when, just that, it's okay to say, but not to, not to say everything out there
That's
because
correct.
like
Yes,
you said, it can
absolutely.
open up Pandora's box, so to speak, and that's not a good thing. And now you're really going to have to react rather than respond because that's going to be a tough one to get out
Yeah.
of, especially from a
And
legal
that's
standpoint.
what you just said there is very important because if you're prepared and if you have a plan, you respond. If
Yeah,
you've never planned for crisis, and by the way, it's not if, it's when,
it's
and it
when.
could be something minor.
Yeah,
But if you don't have a plan, you are going to react. You're not going to respond. It's just because, and you've never exercised different events that could happen to your organization.
absolutely. Well, Kevin, this has been a fabulous show. Just a lot of valuable insights. I want to thank you personally for taking the time to be here today, and also from our staff here at Sustainable Success at the Voice America Business Channel. I want to thank you again for being here.
No, it's my pleasure.
And if you can share, I would love to give this, minute and a half or so to let you share with the audience. How can they get in touch with you? What are you up to? And anything you like to share or provide them?
Well, sure. Of course, am a professional speaker and I can speak on public speaking. I actually have a 2 hour interactive or an hour and a half to 2 hour interactive workshop that I can come and give at a company offsite. I can give a keynote at your next conference and talk about just about anything in the business world that you want me to talk about. The the crisis management I do is in association with my friends over at Adenel. I need to spell that. ADENNILL.com, Adenil.com. So if you need a plan or want to pick our brain a little bit about what you might need, we also have a free assessment at that website where you can assess your level of preparedness, whether it's your business, a school, and it doesn't matter what size. We deal all the way up with the Fortune 500. One of the popular things that's becoming more popular with what we provide is cybersecurity. And we have a very accomplished team member at Adno on cybersecurity. So that's our crisis management company, and I'm a principal there. And then I have my public speaking and training company. It's called McIntyre Speaks, MCINTYRE, speaks.com. And on there, there's lots of buttons where you can schedule some time with me to talk to me over Zoom. And I'm not a hard sell. I'm not going to beat you up. I'll just find out what you need and if I can meet that need. And then you also can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/en/Kevin C. McIntyre. There's lots of Kevin McIntyres out there. So
Yes.
make sure you get the right one.
Right, Ron. And we'll make sure that that is in the show notes, by the way. So we do have that in the show notes. So they'll be able to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank
To the
you.
right, to the right in the Kevin McIntyre, not just
That's the
any.
one. That guy. That guy you introduced at the beginning.
Well, we thank you so much, Kevin. We are so thankful for again you being here. We'd love to have you back on a future show with us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Sustainable Success. And again, we're on the new platform with Libsyn. Again, we encourage you to check us out also not only on Libsyn, also on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube as well. We're also distributed on iHeart, among other areas. So again, encourage you to check us out there and follow us on our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 2017. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week at the same time, here as usual with another subject matter expert sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you and your business to the next level. Till then, everybody, have